to
Yes, sir, it's
see the
visible.
screen. Yeah, I think yeah, I added some kind of title about our topic like REST API in a web application development and how we can create the REST APIs and how we can integrate in a uh, other client, like how it is scalable option for when you are connecting with the multiple systems. Like that, I added some kind of caption. And about my, I will give some kind of brief introduction about myself and what exactly I did so far, right? I almost have the 13 plus years of experience in a web application development. And initial career, I worked on e-commerce domain. Like I created some kind of shopping carts and I worked on some kind of WordPress related CMS applications. And after giant Excelra, I mostly dealing with the license domain. Here, the core area is drug repurposing, drug discovery. The aim is about molecule to medicine. In this area, we will work on the digitalization part. Like we will create some kind of curation tools, and we will develop some kind of data analytics tools and data dashboarding tools. All are we mostly use the REST APIs, and but 5 years back we mostly use the MVC pattern. We use some kind of web application architecture with the different pattern like monolithic, not about single page application or REST APIs or microservice architecture. You heard about some kind of model view control MVC. That kind of pattern was popular previously. Now current trend is about single page application and REST API, and REST API also some kind of microservices. That is uh, uh, the trend whatever we are following now. And technology wise, we are mostly using the Angular, React, Vue.js in a front end wise, and HTML, CSS, JavaScript is common. And about the REST API part, Python, Node.js, .NET, Java, that kind of technologies we are mostly dealing with. Node.js also. And regarding the database, PostgreSQL, MySQL, and some kind of non-relation DB like MongoDB, like that we are using. Yeah, and we are using some kind of the compared to other domain and our license domain, we are mostly dealing with the data analytics. Like we need to represent the data in a graphs, right? You're seeing the some kind of analytics about the bar chart, pie chart like that. But here we are mostly dealing with the some kind of custom visualizations using the Plotly.js and the D3.js. You can search up the D3.js. How regularly we can create the custom visualization. That is some kind of interesting topic in a data visualization part that we'll cover in a next coming session. Yeah, I think yeah, this is mostly about what exactly my work and what we are exploring in my current company, and about our current today's topic about the some kind of architectural style in a web service. Like previously we discussed about what is a web application and website, right? And when we are creating the larger scale applications, we mostly are dealing with the REST APIs. The REST API means here when you observe the definition wise, right? This is some kind of representing the some kind of resource, some kind of data you can consider, and we need to display that in our client side. Here, that format will be changed based upon our resource. That will be give JSON or text or whatever the stream. Like when you are dealing with the some kind of export options, right? You will get the stream also. We need to convert the stream into some kind of representative format like PDF or PPT or whatever the one or Excel like that. But here more about REST is some kind of stateful format we need to transfer from server to client. This is a more about the definition, like represent the state of resource. Resource means when you look at our, I mentioned about the e-commerce application, right? E-commerce application means some kind of orders or products, admin. Like this, we need to divide the our total features as a resource. That resource combination of some kind of entities. Like here, when you consider the example, right? Here we are representing some kind of resource. It is about the survey. What is the survey result and what is the score and what is the message and some kind of unique information about the primary keys. This will useful for the tracking the details. This keys topics we can cover in a database side. I think today mostly I will cover about the this RESTful concept, whatever we have in a definition wise. You do you have any questions or queries about the REST so far? What is the REST in a client server point of view? Any pings, Ravi?
Yeah.
This is some kind of state of resource we are sharing between the multiple
Like
systems. Like
there are
here,
few questions.
yeah,
Yeah. Difference between REST versus SOAP API.
yeah, SOAP and the rest almost similar, but here I mentioned some kind of stateless, right? Statelessness means every request is a independent. There is no connectivity between the request. Here, when I request the client to server, right, I am sending one of the requests using the HTTP or HTTPS protocol. Here, that request is independent, and another client also send the another request that is also independent. When you look at the SOAP, right, all are interconnected. Whatever the request, how client is sending, and we need to follow some kind of TCP protocol like that. This is some kind of tightly coupled interaction between the client and server. But here, in a REST perspective, these are loosely coupled. But we need to add some kind of mechanism about tightening. Like we need to add some authorization or authentication for providing some kind of we need to handle a fault tolerance. The only allowed client should hit our REST APIs. Like that, we have some kind of mechanism. In a architectural style wise, these are the loosely coupled in a REST point of view. In the SOAP base, these are the tightly coupled using some kind of TCP or other protocols. And every this is stateful, not stateless. Every request some kind of tightly coupled with the some kind of protocols. And one more thing
Uh,
is, I mentioned about the response, right? JSON. This is one of the main difference here. REST is a JSON, and SOAP is support the XML. This is in our client interchange point of view, like client to server. JSON is a lightweight, and XML is a some kind of high weightage is there for a transferring the data or representing in a web pages also. Compared to XML, JSON is a we can easily represent in a web pages for every client, like in our JavaScript or any uh, in exchanging between the two clients also. This is a lightweight. That is one of the main reasons. Stateless and stateful, and one of the response. REST is a JSON and SOAP is a XML. And
and
JSON is a lightweight. That is all.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there is one more question. Can you explain in a simple example use case of REST API?
Yes, yeah, that is our end goal in our session, right? I created some kind of one of the project for my friend company. Here I created one of the Angular application, and this will hit the APIs, and we are getting this kind of data, right? I think you already heard about this kind of developer tool in a browser. Uh, when you look at our network, okay, for tracking our API calls, right? You need to hit the network in our developer tool, and you need to use the feature etc. And here, when we are doing for the practical session in our, I will represent how exactly we are hitting the REST API and how we are getting the data. Like this, we will get that this is the request. This is a path about the ledger, one of the screen, right?
Mm.
And here I'm hitting the request from our Angular application. And this is our Angular app. This is Angular 16 application. When you look at our Angular, right, this is a front-end application. This is developed using the Angular 16. And here I integrated one of the API. That API developed using the Laravel. I mentioned about some kind of technical stack, PHP, Node.js, Java. Here we have the multiple technologies we have. Here I developed the application using the Laravel. That one I will cover in a next slides. And after all slides I covered, right, in the practical session, we can cover how exactly I integrated the REST API in our Angular application, how exactly we are getting the data, and how what is the role of the MySQL, and how what is the role of the Laravel, and what is the role of the Angular. Like that, I will cover the total end to end. Definitely, that will cover the some kind of sense about what is the REST API and how exactly we integrate it in the front end. What you can get the differentiation between the this client and middleware and the back end. Every time we are considering as the front end and back end, right? But here I can differentiate the front end, back end, and middleware also. These three terminology you can easily understand once we complete this total session. Yeah, definitely we can cover that one.
And one more question, sir. Sir, explain the work of API with a real-time example.
Yeah, that
You
yeah,
want?
this is a real time scenario I will cover. Yeah, that is a real time application. I will showcase what is the scenario and what is the role of the front end, what we can do using the HTML, CS, JavaScript, why we are using the REST API. That thing also we can cover in our practical session. What is the capability of the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and what is the capability of the REST? Like that, you can easily get the point when you're explaining the things to other or when you're dealing with the application also, you can easily understand. I think we covered the first point and only the missing thing is the methods. When you look at our every website or every the HTTP URL, right? You will see about the HTTP and HTTPS. This is some kind of part in a URL. The uniform resource locator, right? When you opening any website in our browser, you will see some kind of domain, the domain name and the protocols. Here you are not able to see the exact protocol. When I copy, right, you can see that here you are seeing that this is a HTTP and we have the HTTPS also. The SSL certificate we need to install or we need to bind manually in our web server. Then that will encrypt the data when that is transferred into the browser. And here, this is the protocol and this is our domain name and this is the subpath in our URL perspective. This is total we are calling as a URL. And we are calling as a uniform resource locator, right? This is some kind of identification about our domain name. And here, this is a mostly domain and this will cover, and this is about the subpath. This is the main thing about I am talking about the resource. When you look at our e-commerce application, right? Some kind of Zomato or whatever application you will take. Here you will see about some kind of orders. And you will see some kind of products or menu. Like this, we have some kind of different URI, uniform resource identifier. And based upon this subpath, right, orders or menu, like this, we can divide as a REST API or microservices. Then using this subpath, right, our application will navigate to the separate the route, and that will hit our specific business logic, and that will hit the specific data table. Like here, we have the some kind of MySQL table I'm showing. Here we have the multiple tables, whatever the menu or whatever the orders, whatever the products like that. The whatever the business logic will execute like in a query, and after the query we will get the records, and based upon this records we need to write some kind of logic in our APIs. Like when you look at our PHP code, right? This is our PHP code. Some guys I think covered in a academics like Python, PHP. These are the scripting languages. Here I have some kind of rough code. This is about the object relation mapping. This is some kind of concept in a REST APIs or any programming language. Object relation mapping. Directly we can create the entities in a database, and that will create our controllers and models. Then that will give the data to our controller. Model will give the data to controller, and controller will execute the business logic about the route. Like here I mentioned the create and store and show and edit. These are some kind of controllers I mentioned. And in the I talked about some kind of routes, right? The routes I configured in a middleware. Like API created one of the middleware. Here I configure like this. The ledger in this example, and get and put and delete. These are some kind of request methods. Based upon this request method, I routed to the internal subroutes. Like some this post route will create the ledgers in our application, and get will represent the data, and put will update the data. Here it will do the insert. Here it will do the update. in our MySQL or that SQL perspective. Like this, here only we are differentiating the business logic. Like this, our code will be split into the multiple entities. Like what exactly we are doing in a business logic perspective, we are doing some kind of insertion and we are doing some kind of deletions and we are doing some kind of operations. Like that, we are following some kind of solid principles, right? In this, we are covering some kind of a single responsibility. Every method have the some kind of single responsibility. Like one will cover the insertion, one will cover the delete, and one will cover the update. Like this, and here these are the methods. The get method will give the data based upon the subroute, and when I am reviewing this the subroute, right, I am getting all records because I routed the different function. Here I am doing the index method in the controllers. So what exactly here we are doing in an index method? Here I am representing the all records. In the ledger, I am fetching the all records. That's why I'm getting the all records, whatever there in a table. Here, when you look at our table, right, almost I have the 5 records. That's why in the Postman, when I'm you will see these all records. And one more advantage using the developer and Postman tool, right? When you upload in a here, yeah, here you can see total 5 records. The index start from the 0, right? Now that's why it is showing the 4. Total records are 5. And some scenarios I need to represent the only one of the entity. Then it will represent the only one. Then we need to configure. In a get method, I configured like I need to pass the one of the ID. Then I need to filter and I need to represent the that specific entity. Like here, find or fail means when we don't have any specific ID, right? Then that will fail and that will give the 4 not fail. And here I will showcase the scenario, the fail scenario. And one more thing is status codes. I mentioned in our PPT in a third point about the request and response and JSON status codes. This is one of the main topic in our HTTP perspective, right? If our HTTP request is success, then we will get the 200 status codes. The 201 and 202, there is also different kind of scenarios we need to handle. When status is still okay, but you will see some kind of 201 also, some scenarios. At that time, you don't have any content in it. That API call. That's a kind of scenarios also you will see. And 300 means that is not modified. That will give the cached content, and 400 is some kind of client side validation error, and 500 means backend error. Like that we will see. And I will showcase some kind of 400 scenario also. And 400 means 4 not X. Here I need to improve our terminology. Like you will see about the 401, 404, 402, 403 also we will see. 403 means forbidden like that. 401 means client side error. Like that, I will showcase one of the scenario like 400 scenario when we will see. Like I'm passing some kind of ID 6 that is not exist in our database. Then that will report like this. You will see this kind of status. Here you will see. This is our REST API giving the 404 status because that is data is not exist. Based upon this, when you're dealing with any in a developer point of view, right? Based upon this 404, we will showcase one of the dedicated messages to our customer end user. If it is 401 or 404, we will showcase the different kind of scenarios. When you are dealing with the authorization authentication, right? You will see about 401, 403, that kind of messages. Those are main about authentication, authorization, that kind of criteria we need to handle. Anyone heard about what is the authorization or authentication? Anyone authentication, authorization? And one more thing is in our whatever we are showcasing in our Postman, right? This is some testing tool about testing our REST APIs. What is the request and what is the response we are getting, and how we can do some kind of simulations also. We can do some kind of performance test also. We can do using this Postman tool compared to developer tool and Postman, right? Why we are calling using this kind of different tools? We have developer tool also. We can do all tracking about our REST API, what we are passing and what we are getting as a response, and what we are passing as a request. And we can see and we can track the time also, how many milliseconds or how many minutes it's taking. But still we are using the Postman, right? This is some kind of useful tool for the testers or developers. We can do some kind of high level test. Here we are using the test, right? We can do some kind of test, and we can do some kind of settings, and we can run some kind of scripts. I think we covered what are the main topics in our REST API about what is the response and what is the request, and how exactly we are passing the request to the server, and how we are getting the data from the database using this middleware. Here our middleware is a Laravel PHP code. That's why we are using the .php, but our framework is a Laravel. And here our real time, I add one of the diagram about the real time scenario, how API is working between client and server architecture. Like user will request the waiter to whatever they want. Users means whatever the customers, and they will request, and the waiter will depend on that kitchen and whatever the different flavors. Like I talked about the get and put and delete. You can consider these are the different flavors, and that we will cover on a you will order, right? That will you can consider as a different kind of methods and different kind of parameters. Like parameters means I am passing some kind of six, right? Here ID. That one you can consider as a parameter. In the get point of view, in the get method point of view, you can consider that is a query parameter. In our post, you can consider payload. These are the query strings, right? I will showcase one of the scenario like we can submit the data to our server. Like I need to add the one ledger. Ledger means some kind of combination of this belongs to some kind of GST related form. I need to add some kind of information about the company and some kind of invoice related information. And I'm adding some kind of amount, and these are some kind of integers I need to add. Right? And I'm submitting. And here I'm clearing the network tool. Here you can use this symbol. You can clear this previous network calls. And here I'm submitting the data to our API. And this will submit the data to our API, and this will save into our database. And here, yeah, this is success owner status code, and this will put the data. And here, whatever we are passing, this will showcase. Here I'm adding some artistic invoice, some type of here, and what are the fields I submitted, and some fields are I passing in invisible mode. I am passing in a backend directly instead of showing to the end user. These are the some kind of tracking information when Excel user created and when user is updated, and some kind of information for the tracking. These are the users who added the due amount and pay invoice amount, like this user added some information. And here not I'm submitting any response here. Here directly we are getting the 200 star success, okay. But here we can pass some kind of information to that client also. But here I am passing the blank information, I think. Here anyway our status code is 200. This information should save in a database directly. Here you can see this is our sixth record, and this is our whatever we added the information, and this is our due amount. Like this is some kind of real-time scenario. Here I'm submitting the data from our single page application. This is Angular application, and we are submitting the data using our middleware. Our middleware is a Laravel, and our Laravel submit the request into our MySQL. Like this is some kind of practical scenario we covered. And here, when you observe the major things, right? Status code and request method is a post, and how we can submit the data using the post method compared to get method compared to post method, right? Here, when you observe the get method, you are seeing the get parameters. But when you are dealing with the post method or put method, right, you will see this kind of request payload or form data. When you are dealing with the files, right, we need to submit the form as a form data also. I think that will we can cover when we are dealing with the files that concept. But here today we are just dealing with some kind of basic concept. That's why here we are doing passing the data as a some kind of request payload or get parameters. These two topics we are covering. The file farm data we can cover when we are dealing with the files. This is the request payload. When you dealing with the your side projects or your freelancing work, or when you're dealing the interviews, right? They will ask about question like interview ask you the question about what is the difference between the get or post, get and post. Like here you can differentiate like using the post we can submit the data, and we can submit the data as a request payload, and using the get method we can pass as the query parameters. And one more thing is one major difference is using the get method we can pass parameters as a 120 kb. Some kind of this data is we can pass the 120 kb only. That is some kind of that will change based upon the browser. The best practice is when you're dealing with the 120 kb, then we can choose the get method. Otherwise, you need to convert the normal function also should be in a post. Then only you can submit the more data to the server. Like that, we have some kind of difference between the get and post. When you're dealing with the more than 120 kb data, right? Then you should switch between the get to the post and put our remaining methods. This is one of the important thing you need to when you're dealing with the REST API, you need to switch between the get or post. When you're choosing the right method, right, you need to follow these things. When you're dealing with the search or some kind of only get operations, we need to do some kind of we need to get the data from the fetch the data from the server. Then you can go to the get directly. But only you can convert. You need to convert the get method to post when you are dealing with the high extensive search. Some applications, when you observe it, they will provide the advanced search, like LinkedIn or some kind of applications, enterprise applications. They will provide the multiple combination sets. At that time, that query parameters will increase the 120 kb limit, the parameter total length. At that time, that will automatically fail by the browser. The request will automatically cancel by the browser. At that time, we need to consider our scenario, our business logic, scenario requirements. Then we need to consider about choosing which method when you're dealing with the creation of the REST APIs. I think we covered the request methods also. I think next we can go to the next slide about decoupling about the front end and back end and enabling the independent development of the UI and business logic. And one more thing is about our latest trend in a I covered about we are dealing with a single page application and some kind of REST APIs or microservices, right? One more advantage with our company side or development perspective, this will save a lot of time in a team collaboration perspective. Or one of the developer can continue the front end work independently, and they will commit the total work to our repository, and we can do the peer reviews, and we can hand out the total work to our DevOps team, and they will create the CI/CD pipeline. They will host the application. And REST API team, they will continue their work in a Laravel or whatever the chosen technology. Like this, we can divide the work with our team, and we can continue the our backlogs in our sprints or feature perspective, in agile development perspective. Parallelly, we can progress on our development part. Previously, what happened was we follow the mostly in a MVC pattern. You heard about this kind of terminology, and you can search the terminology in our to modal view control. Previously, we use some kind of now also some kind of Spring Boot and .NET Core and this Node.js, PHP also, Laravel also. We have the another pattern called MVC. Current trend is we are calling it a single page application, and we are dividing into the REST API. We separated into two things. Here we are mostly front end and back end. And we can call it the middleware. Middleware also we are covering here. Here this is a tightly coupled the total middleware logic and front end logic. We totally combine the HTML, CSS into the one of the controller file, the root, and we will execute this total logic into web server, and web server will execute the logic in a the logic whatever we are dealing with based upon the request, like that will fetch the data from the DB, or that will execute the only business logic within a web server, and that will give the data to the browser, and browser will execute the total that HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and that will give the data. That's why many of the applications are very slow and response time is very high. Like that, some kind of performance enhancement we need to take care in our cloud server or a total development point of view. When you look at our application, right? When you loading any application, you will see about some kind of this times. It is showing the milliseconds and how much time it is taking for the first byte, like that. Here, when you waiting for the server response, then it will download the data. When you observe previously, right, this time it will take almost minutes or seconds, like that. This kind of duration is reduced when we divide the application SPA and REST API, right? That REST API will submit the all API request into the in a background, and that will fetch the data, and that will render into the application directly. And previously, what happened was that will submit the total request to the web server, and web server divide the total logic into the what are the static files, what are the dynamic requests, and the dynamic request to go to the web server, and web server request to go to the DB, and DB server respond to the web server, and web server respond to the client browser. And here some kind of lookups happen, some kind of DNS mapping, and we need to apply some kind of cache mechanism. Like that, here this will take a lot of time for serving one request. That's why now we divide the logic into the single page application as a front end, and we divided the middleware as a REST API, and REST API will interact with the DB server, and DB server will interact with the only that particular endpoint, and endpoint will serve the response to the front end application. Like that, this will solve the problem about this kind of response time, but still we need to take care about the performance related things, like we need to maintain some kind of pagination, and we need to maintain some kind of cache wherever required. Sometimes we will hit the same API, and we will show the some kind of count. That count will not change in a weekly or monthly. Then we need to apply the some kind of cache in a database query level, or we need to apply the cache in a REST API level. That kind of things still we need to follow, but it solved a lot of problems in a performance perspective. This SP and REST API architecture compared to MVC. That's why these are popular. Like when you compare the technology, right? React and Angular, Vue.js are popular now. Previously, jQuery and that Struts, Hibernate, Coordinator, Laravel MVC, that kind of patterns are popular previously. Now the current trend is changed. Now modern frameworks we are using like SPA and REST APIs and whatever the technology. And here in the SPA point of view, you can use React.js, or you can create the SPA using the pure JavaScript also, but that will take some time. Angular, Vue.js, and we have the other libraries also we have. In the REST API I mentioned, and we covered one of the slide also, like we can, yeah, here the frameworks we cover like Spring Boot, ASP.NET, Express.js, and Flask. These are the Python related, and Laravel and Coordinator. And this is we covered as our currently whatever the practical workshop we are dealing with, right? In the MySQL and Laravel framework. This is the PHP related framework. Any questions so far? Any confusion or any clarity?
There are few more questions. We will be attempting and answering those in the last of the session.
Okay. Any current topics, sir? We covered already.
Yeah, we already covered all those. So we will be attempting these questions in the end of the session.
Okay, sure. I think technology point of view also we covered. Like we can use any technology like Spring Boot, ASP.NET. In the ASP.NET also you can .NET Core. You heard about some kind of .NET Core we use in a creating one of the client. They proposed the .NET Core. Yeah, we developed the web APIs using the .NET Core. And Express JS like that we have the Sequelizer like that you will see different kind of Node.js frameworks and Flask, Django, and I think this is a fast API. I think. If I'm not- I go ahead. You had the fast API in Python, and here you can use some kind of Slim framework also. I missed. This is one of the framework. This is about the more about the REST API point of view, PHP perspective. Laravel and the Slim. These are the somebody favorite choice when they are dealing with the PHP. Ladder E and Symfony Gen, like that we have the many frameworks in the PHP like Node.js. And Postman we covered about this is similar to the developer too, but we have some kind of advantage about testing perspective. We can do some kind of automation using the scripts in a performance perspective or checking the authorization perspective. And Swagger also similar to the developer tool and Postman. And this is our inbuilt some kind of package in a REST API. We need to share our Swagger to our testing team, then they will validate our APIs. And Swagger showcase some kind of what are the methods in a controller wise, and that will represent the all routes in our controllers, and that will give some kind of support in a checking the request and what is the response we are getting. This is also some kind of testing tool, and this will give some kind of extra capability like the method is what is the method supporting the route that will the put or get or whatever the request method, and what is the default payload. This will show, and we can this is some kind of important package we need to cover in our REST API. This week we will cover in our next topic when you are go with the advanced level topics, right? So agree is one of the important package thing we need to cover in our REST API. And about the microservices integration, this is also similar to whatever I talked about the subroutes, like when you're dividing the one of the features, right? Feature modules like orders and products and some kind of cart functionality in our applications. We are mostly dealing with the web services. This is also one of the advantage like independent development. Our dedicated team member deal with one of the microservices. That microservice will serve the user related queries. One of the where microservice will deal about the products, the product delete or product get or product update, that kind of methods. Like this, we are dividing the our all services into microservices. We are dividing the our big that business logic into multiple chunks. That is the only thing. But here we will cover the same things like we need to maintain the authentication, authorization. Like I asked about some kind of authentication and authorization, right? Authentication visa, that is the first step. The user is already exist in our application database or not. If he is a user is already exist, right? Then we will validate the user ID password, or we can use the some kind of single sign-on mechanism, like using the social media, that Google or whatever, or we can use the ping ID or some kind of single sign-on implementations using the OAuth kind of technology, and we will validate the user, and user is valid user, right? That is means user is authenticated successfully. Then user will navigate to our application, and here we are dealing with about the authorization part. Authorization means user have the which kind of roles. When you're dealing with the application development, right? We will deal with the multiple roles. User will be the normal user or super admin or user will be the vendor in our e-commerce application point of view, right? In our Amazon or whatever the application, Flipkart or whatever e-commerce application, they will divide as a normal customer or vendor or super admin. Super admin belongs to that e-commerce application. Like this, they will divide the roles, and based upon the roles, we need to provide the access control. Access control means they will access the specific kind of features and specific part of our application. And other user is trying to, one second, I need to put my adapter. Sorry.
You can share your questions in the chat box till that. So I will be answering after the session. You can start sharing your questions now. I think so. At the end of the session only, you'll share your questions, right? Till that,
Until now, whatever the questions that you had, try to share in the chat box so that we will be asking on behalf, behalf of you, because you people are not coming out or turning on your cameras, turning on your mics, however you are not ready to showcase to the social media platforms.
yeah, that's true. Even we are asking you to share your takeaways, key takeaways. At the end of the session, you're not even giving it on our social media. At least you can post us. You can tag Slate Valley and Learn X30. What was your experience? I can see 25 students right now. I want 25 students takeaway today in my social media accounts. At Slate Valley, you should all tag Slate Valley and tag everyone. The pictures and the comments should be down. So I'm going to check it today. I want 25 at least. Okay, leaving Ravi and me, at least 23. Okay. Yeah, you can.
Excluding speaker also. You
Yeah,
need to
you can
exclude.
speak. Yeah, you can share it at the end of the session. So we'll be discussing it. What are the status code? Okay, to share it first. Yeah, we're going to comment and like. We'll be supporting you guys. Yes, sir is here.
Yeah, team, one second, I rejoined.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sharing my screen. Yeah, one second, I'm sharing my screen. Yeah, I think we are at microservices integration, right? Yeah, I defined as microservices. More about we are chunking our business logic into multiple things, right? Like I gave the example like orders and products like this. We need to cover. And yeah, I think yeah, role-based access control. Yeah, I need to cover the authorization part, right? Yeah. I'm in a mute or I think
So
yeah.
we're
Yeah,
audible.
I think, yeah. I think I am at that authorization part, I think.
Yes, so
Yeah. The authorization part I covered about the roles, right? One of the important topic about the authorization part, the RBAC. Like I not mentioned about the RBAC in the interviews or in our best practices point of view also. RBAC is one of the important topic, like role-based access control. Based upon the role, we will allow the user. Like we are trying to with the one of the API also. I am a normal user, but I am hitting one of the admin endpoint. Then you will see about the 403 status code because I am unauthorized user, right? That's why you're seeing as a 403 as a status code, and you will get the some kind of forbidden message, whatever we configured in that endpoint. Like that, that RBAC is one of the important topic that is about the authorization we need to do for every user. Then only we will allow the user to that particular resource. Then user will get the information or user will get the alert like that. And yeah, facilitates communication between the distributed servers. Yeah, when you are created one of the application, right? We are talking about one of the main business logic. Like when you talking about WhatsApp or whatever the enterprise application, right? That main our aim is about a WhatsApp is the main goal is user will end user will send the message to other user and he will respond. That is one of the major thing. And another feature is we can create the groups and we can communicate. That is one of the thing. And one more thing is about the this distributed services. Right? What is the distributed services here? When we are facilitate the communication between the multiple systems, that distribution means here our the simple example is distributed system means in our real time example point of view, this is our client or browser. I am here request to the web server. My web server is here. The XAMPP is my web server. Here in the web server, I am running the PHP, and this is running the request. In a background, I run one of the command, and that will hit this web server. And here you can see this kind of things are happening in a server. When I have started the server, that will hit this that Apache server, and that will serve the request. This is one of the system. Here our browser is running one of the application and this browser is hitting the request to our web server and our web server is hitting the our MySQL. This is another database server, MySQL workbench. This is now acting as a server and client here. And these all distributed systems are connected using this REST API. Here I'm not directly hitting our request to this Apache. Just like I'm submitting the request to that web server using this Laravel or that PHP code, and that will take care about the interaction between the MySQL. Here we can consider as this is a distributed system and facilitating the communication between the multiple systems, servers. And here only thing is we need to take care about the authentication or authorization. Here when I am submitting the request, right, there is no the authorization thing or authorization header. Here you will see some kind of request methods. You will see some kind of authorization barrier token. That thing also can we need to cover about the auth2 or JWT token. That things we can cover in our next. I will showcase one of the example after our all sites we covered it. I will showcase about the authorization authentication in a REST API side also. And this one we covered about the microservices integration and the distributed services, how exactly that is happening in a real time. And these are the some kind of real time examples about how we are integrating the payment gateways. When you interact with any application, right? When you're dealing the cart, when you're doing the payment checkouts, and you will see some kind of a CC Avenue or PayU or Paytm, like this, some kind of payment gateways are they integrated for handling the financial services, right? Here, the main thing is we use some kind of REST API. They will give some kind of authentication keys, and they will provide some kind of the API routes. Here, they will provide some kind of paytm.com/service dot some kind of dedicated subroute, and they will provide some kind of API keys, and that will do the some kind of authorization authentication, and that will allow about the interaction between the payment. User will enter the whatever the details, and that will navigate to the dedicated UPI or credit card related details, and user will enter the details and submit, and user will get the success message. And here this total thing is happening in a request, and how exactly we are passing the request using this HTTP protocol and authorization authentication, and that request submitted to the that multiple systems, and they will validate, and our payment details are validated. Then we will get the 200 status code or dedicated status code, or failure message will get the failure status codes, and we will go to the dedicated page. This total things happening in a REST API only. And the REST API maybe that will be the microservice or dedicated monolithic web service also they will provide. And this kind of things are happening in a REST API only. Previously, this is a very complex part when you're dealing with the MVC architecture, but because of the REST API, these things are we can easily do the integration with the multiple systems. This is also type also one of the payment method, popular method in a like Paytm. This is also one of the popular payment gateway. And our next slide is about creating the REST APIs. I think this is also one of the that vast concept. Like this will take much time, but anyway, I showcase some kind of endpoints and how we can implement like different kind of HTTP methods, like get how exactly it is working, get all or get the specific entity how exactly we are getting, how we can do the edit, and we can do the delete also. And I will showcase one of the failure scenario in our thread operation perspective. I created one of the delete method also, and I integrated. Here I provided one of the drop down, right? Here I added edit and remove. And edit, we are getting this kind of pop-up, right? And delete, I directly hitting the one of the endpoint about the delete functionality. And we can see what happened. I clicked, but there is no response. Here, one more thing is we need to showcase some kind of dedicated message. Something has happened in a system so like that, we need to showcase. And here, what happened is we are getting the 404. The delete method is I not configured in our properly now configured or not. We need to check here. Here I configure the update, but here there is no delete functionality. That's why we are. I think I did not configure here directly. Here I did not configure properly here. This is the problem. Yeah. We need to properly configure, then only it is work. And we need to write the logic in a support. Here I created one kind of destroy method. We can use for this destroy method. And we can delete. This one we can cover in a practical session in our next session. We can cover in a PHP or Java or Node.js or Python. We can cover the coding part also. And here I'm showcasing some kind of part how exactly we can showcase the data and how we can edit the data, how we can update like this. And here one more thing is here we can customize the status code. Like here configured one of the 404 status code, and here I configure the 200 status code with the one of the message. Like this we can configure. And here I can showcase one of the edit scenario. I think in the edit scenario I configured the success message. We can see I'm using building some kind of online. Here you can see, but I need to configure the toaster message properly. Here we can see the data is updated without loading the page, and directly this specific part of the page is updated. This is because of the single page application approach. Backend it will submit the request, and it will. And here we submitted the payload, and here we can see the message. The message is ledger updated successfully. This message I can filter. Like this, you can see we can configure anything. You can get the response in that REST API when you are reading that. And one more thing is I will showcase the same thing in our tools in our AI agents we are using, right? Like Gemini, they are also use this kind of similar kind of approach. This here I'm putting our Gemini on the AI agent, right? Here I'm typing what is web service. How exactly they are hitting the like here you can see they are hitting multiple calls because they here when we look at our enterprise applications, right? They will provide some kind of features to our end user and they will track some kind of information about the feature improvement perspective. They will capture the information like when you are doing right here, they are collecting some kind of information in analytics perspective. They will submit some kind of information to backend and they will track the how user is interacting with the Google Gmail. They will track the information and here our and here you can see generic and I think we got the response also. Here you will see someone how request is submitted to that Google and how we can get the information like this. Here you can see what is web service and they are passing some kind of other information in a backend. Like I am passing some kind of created data updated date, right? And they are passing some kind of EN is a language. And here the query parameter, whatever I'm user is entering. And the preview you will see definitely whatever we are rendering that information, right? Okay. One more thing is encoding, decoding. That is also one of the useful feature in our web application development perspective. Yeah, here you can see the response. This also we are getting as a JSON, but some kind of information is encoding. Here you can see the initiating the research on the web services and I am starting web services and focusing on beginner friendly explanations by using Google. Like this, they are providing the response, and this response will decode to our browser directly using the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and they will render this application. This is a practical scenario, like how exactly Gemini is displaying the information, right? They are passing the information into one of the web service, and you can see this request method is to one post, and the status code is 200, and you can see response, and you can see about this path also, and what is the post and what is the schema is HTTP, yes or HTTP. And these are the encoding techniques. So the gzip deflate, and this will take care of the web server. Language also they defined, and cache also they remove. The content length and what is the content type. I mentioned about one of the content type, right? This is the application or form URL. And this one cookies and local storage. This is some kind of HTML storage. The topics that I think you should they should cover in our front end related things. We will see about HTML storages, right? Local storage is one of the storage and session storage and cookies. Previously, when you're dealing with the MVC pattern, right? Mostly we use the cookies and session storage. And then we will authenticate the user and authorize the user using the cookies combination. And now we are using the local storage. We will store that keys JW tokens in a session storage or local storage. Then we can validate the user and we can send the request. This authorization happening in a local storage. And yeah, we covered the first one also. And this is some kind of integration use cases. Like you would about some kind of service now tool or any enterprise application, right? They mostly use the REST APIs. The business case will be different, like SAP and CRM or Zoho CRM or anything or AWS or Azure or GCP. All are REST API based. The request and response and status codes and some kind of authorization, authentication, and some kind of business logic will submit it to the web server and that will give the response to the end client. The client will be the web browser most of the time. Otherwise, that will be the desktop application, right? The desktop application will be the client or mobile app. The another mobile app will be the client for that request. And we mentioned some kind of popular REST APIs about how we can use some kind of REST API techniques for our regular use cases. You can explore this REST APIs. They will provide some kind of API key, and you can directly use that applications into REST APIs into your own application. But here I in our practicals I showcased my own front end application and my own REST APIs. Our some scenarios is Google or AWS they will provide the REST APIs and we will integrate in our application. We can consider as a third party APIs. That is also one of the consider. The interview will ask about the did you indicate any third party APIs? You can consider this is one kind of third party API scenario like payment gateway integration is one of the scenario. And you integrated some kind of social media uh, authentication or authorization APIs. OAuth implementation. That is also one of the third-party integration scenario. And you integrate some kind of Salesforce APIs into our application, custom application. That is also one of the third-party integration example. I think here we covered about the authentication part, and one more thing is about the versioning. When you are dealing with our application development, right, in our agile development, we will enhance our application. In that case, right, we should maintain some kind of version 1, version 2, or version 3 based upon our sprint plans. We should maintain some kind of versioning. That will solve a lot of problems about the integration perspective. We should integrate the version 1 endpoints in a sprint 1, and we should integrate the version 2 endpoint in our sprint 3 goal. Like that, we can divide our features into this versioning and we will integrate the versions into our front end application. This will solve a lot of the time taken process about mismatching about the integration. The front end because we divided our front end application into front end of SPA and we divided our backend into middleware as a REST API. Right here, this will create a lot of confusion about which API I need to integrate. That's why we need to maintain the version 1 or version 2 or version 3. Like that, we need to maintain some kind of versioning. Then that will solve a lot of problems in a maintenance perspective or enhancement perspective. And rate limiting also I mentioned about the third party integration, right? Here we should maintain some kind of rate limiting in a premium perspective also. When you observe some kind of enterprise applications, right? They will mention about the premium or basic, medium or enterprise like that, right? Here they will limit our REST APIs in a call base. They will do the some kind of premiums. Basic will provide the 20 calls or premium will they will provide the 100 call, 200 calls, 300 calls. Here this rate limiting will be the come into the picture. Like how we can limit the user into the specific limit of calls. This total business logic we need to covering in our gateway level or our API gateway level or business logic level in our REST API. Using that API keys are who based upon the client type, right? Based upon the authorization key, we should limit the user. Sometimes what will happen is user will enter the multiple hits with the wrong password. Then we will block the user and we will show some kind of dedicated message. That is also one of the scenario in rate limiting. We can show The business case will be stakeholder will give the business logic like that. User we need to block the user in a 3 requests or 10 requests. We need to limit the user based upon the how many hits are happened, and we need to or some kind of bandwidth is already used. User downloaded the 1 GB data. Then we need to restrict the user. User should wait for the 1 day or 2 days. This is also one of the real time scenario. Here the rate limit coming into a picture, how we can restrict the user. Using the mechanism like authentication or business logic, we need to configure some kind of configurations in our backend, and we need. This is also same. Some people trying to add the spam content using our REST API. Then we need to validate and use. We need to use some kind of sanitation, and we need to use some kind of Google reCAPTCHA, or we need to use some kind of that authentication or authorization kind of thing. We have the multiple methods about this throttling or that rate limiting concept. And this is some kind of the high level architecture diagram, except Docker, right? Remaining all are whatever I showcase the application, like the Angular application, the whatever the ledger report I showcased, that is a front end application Angular. And this will submit the request to the Laravel. And I am hitting the CRUD operations like selector, insert, update, delete. This kind of operations I did. I am using the MySQL. And here the only one thing is I need to integrate the Docker file about I need to Dockerize the image for the scalability perspective. We can do the Dockerization, and I can do the containerization using this Docker concept. When you are opting down, more users are trying to using our application, right? Then I can opt the Docker containerization. Then we can host the application into the clouds or private cloud or public cloud like that. This is the whatever the in our workshop we covered, right? This is the application like this is our front end using the Angular application. Like I will showcase some kind of package.json files also. Like this is our Angular application. This is the Angular 16 we are using. And Laravel also same. We are also kind of composer.json. This is the Laravel framework. This is the 12th version. These two we covered in our architecture diagram. And MySQL is I am using MySQL workbench. This has the MySQL web server. And here I am storing the data into. I think yeah. This one I will share with Ravi Baba, and you can. And here also one of the and what is the structure about the microservices we can divide, and what are the monolithic routing and database and file system and authentication, authorization and component. These all are in a single that repository, a single application. And here the microservices architecture is we can divide the authorization is one kind of dedicated endpoint, and product endpoint is a one kind of data dedicated endpoint. Like that we will divide the four full-fledged monolithic application into microservices. That is also going to depend based upon our team capability, and based upon our application. We need to choose monolithic or micro. And here monolithic also we can create the REST APIs, and microservices also we can create the REST APIs. Microservices means anyway REST APIs, but using the monolithic architecture also we can create the REST APIs. But all are bundled with a single repository or single scale type. Here we can divide the multiple scales. We can maintain in different folders or different repositories based upon our application architecture. Like when you have the Netflix, right? They will divide the almost 143 microservices. But when we look at our regular applications, we have the some kind of 30 to 40 APIs, but we have in a single application the 40 REST APIs also, and all are hosted in a single web server. Yeah, I think this is about my LinkedIn and my some kind of YouTube channel like I covered, but I covered most of the local language. But yeah, you can see Telugu and English language. You have got some kind of tutorials. These are this is in a starting stage, and you will see some kind of important topics in future.